choice. That's what we believe. We believe we're the chosen people. We don't believe Jews are the chosen people. We don't believe Jews are the ones going to the promised land. We don't think Jews are a part of God. No, Jews are nothing but another part of that same race of devils that come out of Europe. Black people are standing up. Black people are rising up, and they're starting fight.
We were slaves in Egypt. We belong to the Father, ain't no pledge of allegiance. We both to celebrate that killing that he didn't need you. We both to keep the holy days, don't be like the heathen. He said that for a
By the way, they never feature any black people except black people with an American accent.
My name is Elizabeth, and I'm 19 years old, from Jerusalem. My parents immigrated to Israel 20 years ago.
You really know who this stuff is targeted at.
I met with Ali Jaddah, tour guide, and the informal mayor of the African Palestinians in Old Jerusalem. I asked him about his life and relations between the Afro-Arabs and the Jews.
Well, life for him, I think it's the hell. I'm one of those people who had experienced that. To be Palestinian, that's a big problem. But to be a black Palestinian, I'm quite convinced it will be the hell, because as a black Palestinian, I am double oppressed by the Israelis.
In what way?
In what way? I will explain. First of all, they oppress me as a Palestinian, you see. Secondly, they oppress me because of my color. Whenever I go around in the Israeli side, they call me Kushi. Kushi means nigger. Kushi means nigger.
So, in Israel, the land of God, people who are the brothers of the Arabs, two brothers, you are called nigger as I am called nigger in America?
Let's say on the surface, this is what they say, that this is the land of God and we are cousins and there should be total equality. But once you come to the practice, when you come on ground, you will find that there is a lot of discrimination and there is a real divorce between what they say and what they exercise.
Blacks and whites who watch the show saying, so why stay? Why stay when you are called nigger every day? Why stay when you are denied your rights?
On the contrary, the more they humiliate me, the more they oppress me, the more I stick to my land. Because this is my land. I'm so rooted. We are deeply rooted as Africans, as Palestinian Africans in this land. And we know pretty well that our ancestors, I'm talking about thousands and thousands of years, had been here in this country, but they were spread away, taken to Africa, from Africa to the United States. Our ancestors, I'm talking about thousands and thousands of years, had been here in this country, but they were spread away, taken to Africa, from Africa to the United States, 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 from Africa.
Other countries in the region is a sovereign country that makes its own decisions. The United States does not dictate to Israel what it must do, just as we don't dictate to any country what it must do. We present what we believe are the. We present what we believe are the. Good one, Matt. We present. No, I mean, but come on, yeah. It's we present stand-up hour in the briefing room.
إصابة امرأة في الرأس على باب مستشفى ناصر. حسبي الله.
الله يرحمها يا عم. في حالات ثانية يا الله يرحمها.
عندنا الحين هناك.
عندنا ساي.
علي العظيم.
Into the tunnels of Hamas that are fighting us and holding our hostages.
There's no evidence to support the idea that all of this aid is going to Hamas.
Not to the rest of the population. This is intelligence only for terror. That's why they should get only the minimum calories required to survive.
They're starving to death.
They are not
starving. They are starving to death.
You know what? If they are starving, give the hostages back. No, a single loaf of bread should go there till our hostages are coming back.
To many people in the world, listening to what you're saying and what you're protesting for, it sounds like A, a contravention of international law, and B, incredibly callous in the face of an epic humanitarian catastrophe, in the face of children starving to death. People can't understand why anyone in their right mind would advocate for stopping aid.
Hamas has no fair play. Hamas has no rules. Hamas is holding civilians.
You know, even if there is a humanitarian crisis, and there is not, even if there is, it's my right and my duty to prioritize the life of Kfir Bibas, a 1-year-old baby that is there, over any Gazan baby.
To know of or hear about the Middle East conflict, aka the Jewish people versus Palestine. In 1948, Israel gained the status of statehood, but at the cost of freedom of another. Ever since, the Palestinian people and the Israelis have been at perpetual war. As we have proven in parts 1 through 4, the Jewish people are in fact Ukrainians from an area formerly called Khazaria, as attested by their own Jewish historians, scholars, and rabbis. The Palestinians, on the other hand, have a different story. Historians state that when Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 AD, that Rome allowed a small segment of Hebrews to remain, namely servants and farmers, besides the ones captured and the ones who fled into Africa and Arabia. These peoples would eventually incur some mixing with other groups who conquered Palestine, in particular the Ottoman Turks. To this day, the groups of people who occupy Palestine is a combination of the descendants of Ottomans and the original Hebrews, who are labeled as Afro-Palestinians.
The African presence is still visible in Israel today. There are thousands of African Palestinians who live in Israel with deep roots to the land.
To the information that we have, dozens of them have bullets in their heads. It's not like, firing in the sky to restrain people if there was confusions and chaos. It was intentionally targeting and killing. This outrageous, massacre is a testimony to the fact that as long as the Security Council is paralyzed and vetoes casted, then it is costing the Palestinian people their lives. The Security Council should say enough is enough, and if they have a spine and determination to put an end to these massacres from happening all over again, What we need is a ceasefire. For heaven's sake, put an end to killing civilians, children, women.
People in Gaza.
Behind me is an evacuation corridor that the IDF set up to enable the evacuation of civilians from the northern part of the Gaza Strip to the southern part of the Gaza Strip.
People in Gaza need to die.
Is that seriously what you think?
I am killed 2 people Palestinian.
I don't believe you did that.
I am in the army. Boom, 2 people.
We're making a maximum effort to try to safeguard Gaza's civilian population.
I don't care about Gaza. I literally don't care. For all I care, they can go out and swim in the sea. I want to see dead bodies of terrorists around Gaza.
Is reported to start shooting, having snipers outside a church.
I saw the reports this morning. The church, there are no churches in Gaza, so I'm not quite sure where the report is talking about.
There's a Catholic church in there, isn't there? That is.
Yeah, unfortunately, there are no Christians because they were driven out by.
Well, respectfully, there are Christians because I spoke to an MP yesterday who has family members in the church who are Christians.
Well, I don't know what happened. I don't know who was attacked. I didn't see the report.
So you saw the report or you didn't see the report?
I saw the reports this morning. I didn't see the report.
So it's both then? Okay.
A nightmare. Literally.
את עזה ללא ערבים ולהקים התיישבות יהודית בכל חבל עזה. כאשר אומרים ביישובי העוטף שרוצים לראות את הים, זאת אומרת, כדי לראות את הים צריך שלא יהיו בתים. לא יהיו בתים, לא יהיו ערבים, רק זו דרך אלגנטית, רומנטית.
The Arab people, it will happen now, right now in
Really?
Gaza, because Gaza now in the hell.
You really believe that?
Yeah, all the people in Gaza dead. What you want, and it's really fun.
And most of the Israelis on there are young kids, and you really, through them, you see that a big part of the indoctrination starts very young and makes them believe that every Palestinian out there is trying to kill them, which is crazy. That as if like Palestinians are just born to hate Jews. It's insane, completely deflecting from the idea that Palestinians hate being oppressed.
Why did Israel bomb a refugee camp? Why is Israel bombing innocent civilians' homes?
The people that the Israeli army were fighting, those were terrorists. Yes, they are children. You want to know why? Because they raise these people to kill us.
Are you saying children are terrorists?
I'm saying children can be terrorists. Yes, they can.
Innocent lives in Gaza were killed by Israel. Do you know?
I don't care.
You don't care?
No, I don't care.
And you say, free Palestine. No, free Israel.
Free Israel from what?
You liar.
Free Israel from what?
From Israel.
What does
democracy in the Middle East unless you live over the border in Gaza? And then shut up, prisoner. We're Israeli. We care about multiracial democracy as long as the Arabs.
Settlers are not a thing. Why are we saying this? You are an illegal. You're a squatter. If I just go to some farmer's field right now and start building a house, they're not calling me a settler. They're calling the police.
We're Israeli, so I can just move to the West Bank and take someone's house even though I'm from...
That I can sit here and try to live with myself that I, as a Jewish person whose grandfather survived Auschwitz, and I cannot live with myself knowing that I am not doing enough. So what I'm asking you is I am asking you to compile every single thing that I have ever said against the settler colonial Zionist entity. And by the way, I haven't been just speaking out since this month or so. This has been years now. So I'm asking you to actually do your research and to take your job seriously. And I want you to compile every single thing where I've spoken out against Zionism, and I want you to frame it. And I will hang it in my home, and I will show it to my children to show them where I stood when Zionism was still around. Because Zionism is going to end. We will dismantle settler colonialism. We will build relational futures in a free Palestine where every single person is treated as a full human being. And the fact that anyone can hear freedom as a call for genocide attests to the logic of the colonizer, who can only imagine existing if it comes at the expense of someone else. They can only imagine living in a place that is atop the ruins of another population. Y'all need to end Zionism to get...
I wanted to make a nice get ready with me for shopping with mom, but instead, get ready with me for my reserve duty. Before you hear some fake news about the IDF, let me get you some facts about the Operation Shield and Arrow. Only a week ago, around 100 rockets were fired into Israel by the Islamic Jihad in order to kill innocent Israelis.
Young Jewish people go on birthright when we are 18 years old. Prior to the age of 18, you're a minor. You're probably living at home with your parents, going to synagogue with them. You may not be spending a lot of time with people who are outside of your community, and you're just getting bombarded with Zionist propaganda from the day you're born. But when you're 18, it's a little bit different. You're starting to grow up, you're becoming an adult, you may be thinking for yourself at this point. Most likely you're starting to spend time with people who are different than you, who are not Zionists, who have more information about Israel than you do. Israel can't have this, so what they do is they roll out the red carpet, they give you an all-expenses-paid trip, and they make sure that you are hosted by the hottest Israeli soldiers that they can find because they handpick them. And they do this because they want you to fall in love with Israel. So they show you all of the most beautiful beaches and the most popular tourist destinations. They let you go out virtually unattended with these Israeli soldiers who take you to bars and clubs and they get you drunk. And they tell you all about how they are
going on today to the Palestinians as very rare, because he says never has been an intention of a genocide being so explicit.
שמלחמה זה אני, אתה רגל על הגב. שמלחמה זה אני מודה, אני אגיד את זה פה, לא אכפת לי שירדו עליי, אוספים פה חומרים. אני לא נרדם טוב בלי שאני רואה בתים קורסים בעזה. מה אני אעשה? עוד בתים, עוד מגדלים, שלא יהיה להם לאן לחזור. הם צריכים לזכור, הם עמלק. הם צריכים לזכור את זה להרבה מאוד זמן.
I never met such an Israel, and I met all kind of sides of Israel in my long career. It's first of all the first war that I can recall that has no critics, no moral doubts or any other question marks. A famous commentator in a mainstream channel suggested the other day that Israel should have started with 100,000 people in Gaza.
הרעיונות שאפשר להמשיך ולהחזיק תחת כיבוש. זה תחת כיבוש. אז אפשר לא לאהוב את המילה, אבל מה שקורה זה תחת כיבוש.
Palestinians from Gaza, they hate us for many years. Give them and we give them and they just like rockets. Boom. Yes, all the time.
Why?
Without us, they don't have water, electricity. Like, we get used to that.
2018, when I was 20 years old, I was studying in Jerusalem in an all-male religious nationalist seminary. And while I was there, I started having questions about the entire population that existed beyond these walls. And as part of my program, there were individuals who were doing this interesting program where folks actually met Palestinians and heard some of their perspectives. So I decided to go to that program. And I remember I was sitting there at 9 a.m. in Jerusalem, and a Palestinian man had come to speak to us. And he was describing how he had to get up at 4:30 a.m. to make it to Jerusalem at 9 a.m. Even though he lived in Ramallah, which is only like 7 miles away. So obviously my brain goes, well, that doesn't make any sense. And then I listened how he proceeded to talk about the system of checkpoints, how he had to get on a separate bus, how he had to make the calculation of whether it made more sense for him to stay on the bus, knowing that if he's on the bus, he could be kicked off the bus at the checkpoint and go to the back of the line, or if it just made sense to just wait on the non-bus part of the checkpoint to get through to make sure that he got here in time, to speak to a bunch of Zionist Jews to try to convince them that Palestinians were human.
When I was a soldier in the Jenin area guarding the fence, we were patrolling the fence between the Jenin area and Israel. And it's this like what we call a smart fence, which when someone touches it, then you get an indication and then you go there with your Jeep. And one time we had this and there were two kids who were gotta be, from my memory at least, like the maximum 8, maybe 7, 8-year-olds, and they touched the fence. I don't know what they were doing there, but our commander, our officer, he had this idea that they were maybe sent to touch the fence in order to test how fast it takes us to get to that point. And therefore, in order to kind of ruin their idea or their scheme, we will arrest these kids so they know not to try to think about doing anything funny, you know. So basically, we had a reason why to arrest these kids for touching the fence. And I was sent to arrest these two kids and put them in a military jeep and drive up to our base and put them in this little room. And it made sense for a second. And then I was holding these two kids, brothers maybe, or friends, and closing the jeep. And they were crying, terrified, holding each other. And they were looking at me, and they were terrified for me. You know, and I'm a good guy. Why would anybody be so terrified for me, a 7-year-old? And then I realized I'm kidnapping these kids.
Jewish boys and girls, and turn them into monstrous killers of children when they reach 18. It takes a very long, thorough, and sophisticated education to do that. We have an organization called Breaking the Silence, where soldiers confess what they did in the West Bank. In many of these confessions, the soldiers say, I was educated to believe that whatever I do to the Palestinians will save us from another Holocaust.
It was my Israeli ID. Last week, I submitted an application to renounce my Israeli citizenship in the consulate here in Toronto. It wasn't a decision I made lightly. I've been thinking about it for a long time. In fact, from the moment I learned about the real history of the place where I grew up, the history that wasn't taught to us in schools or even talked about while I was living there, until last week at the consulate, it's been a really long process that took 2 decades. Why am I doing this now? Because more than ever, it's clear to me now that in Israel, peace is not the goal. And I don't know if it ever was. This decision is going to affect my life, my ability to visit the place where I grew up. It's going to affect my relationship with my family, my relationships with the people closest to me, not just there, but here in Canada. I spent the past few weeks crying over witnessing horrific, heartbreaking death and pain.
Why don't you come with me to Ramallah? So I'll tell you, the first thought that rose in my mind, it was rising and it said, if I go, you will kill me. Because that was the way I was conditioned. Growing up, for me, Palestinians were terrorists. There was no possibility that a Palestinian was human, and certainly no possibility that Palestinian resistance had nothing to do with Jewish folks, but had to do with the fact that there were settlers kicking Palestinians off their land, upholding apartheid, ethnic cleansing, and genocide. So as that thought was rising, there was another voice in me, and I think this voice is a deep ancestral voice, and to this day, I'm amazed at myself that I was able to challenge all of my conditioning with a second voice, a deeper voice, a deeper knowing. And that voice immediately said, well, you've been told your whole life that this person was going to kill you and that this person was a terrorist and he wasn't human. And he's standing right in front of you and he's the exact opposite of those things. And in that moment, I didn't vocalize that thought and I called bullshit and I said, yeah, I'll come. I'll come. I need to see it for myself. Now, as a Zionist kid growing up, this was unheard of. The thought that I could go to a Palestinian town and come back in anything less than a body bag was absurd. But he said, you got to come in the next couple of days. So during lunch, I took off my kippah, I put on a hat, and I went to Shar Shechem, which is Damascus Gate, the only place I wasn't allowed to go to when I was in yeshiva, for fear that Palestinians would kill me. And the second I stepped into Damascus Gate, I essentially, I don't want to say became Palestinian, that's ridiculous. I had tremendous privilege as a settler, but I got to taste, maybe instead of a drop in the ocean, I got to taste the mist surrounding one drop in the ocean of what it's like to be subject to a settler colonial regime. And I got on a Palestinian bus, and for me, I was like, well, this is interesting that it's a completely different busing system, but even more than that, it's like all of a sudden was with the people who were supposed to kill me. And in fact, The very opposite happened, where when I was on a Palestinian bus, all of a sudden my sense of identity and belonging started to become Palestinian in terms of my sense of where my safety lies. And my sense of threat immediately became, holy shit, I'm on a Palestinian bus. I am being read as Palestinian in a genocidal settler colony. I am about to go through an hour and a half of military checkpoints in knowing that this occupying army can do whatever they want to me.
I think that is the most disheartening thing. I think I thought, at least even 20 years ago when I started to work internationally, that there was this, in my head, some weird idea of good guys, some idea of those, whether it be certain countries or certain peoples. Maybe it was this holdover from World War II and this thought that this was so that the lines were clearer and that there was going to be these human rights. And to watch and understand more and more, it's just simply, that's not what it is. That's not the world. The world is not, these are human rights. It is, these are human rights sometimes for these people, maybe sometimes for these people, never for these people.
Did you know more than half the states in the U.S. have a loyalty oath to the Israeli government, making it illegal to disparage or boycott them? In the U.S., inside of our Constitution, we have the First Amendment, which protects our freedom of speech. That allows for freedom of the press. It allows to peacefully protest. And within reason, we're able to share our feelings about our elected officials all the way up to our own president. And yet we have laws in more than half the states in the U.S. that make it illegal to do that about the government of Israel? I want you to think about that for a second. In our country, they made it illegal in more than half the states to be critical of another country's government.
A teacher in Texas who's been there 9 years, who's said to be excellent at her job, she can't work anymore for the government of Texas because she's not willing to sign an employee contract that essentially says that she must not ever boycott Israel or take any action that in any way penalizes Israel economically.
لا حماية دولية، لا حماية دولية على الإطلاق ولا حصانة لأي شيء. لا تحمينا هذه الدروع ولا تحمينا هذه القبعات. إنها مجرد شعارات نرتديها فقط. هي لا تحمي أي صحفي على الإطلاق. على الإطلاق لا تحمينا هذه الدروع ولا هذه ما نرتديها فقط هي شعارات فقط. نحن هنا ضحايا على الهواء مباشرة. نفقد الأرواح واحدا تلو الآخر بلا أي ثمن. لا حماية.
بالراحة يا أولاد بالراحة خطوة حدش يجري وراه.
أقول لك ليش زعلان؟
ليش زعلان؟
عشان صاحبي الوحيد اللي كان من ضل مين؟ من ضل خليفة استشهد.
أمانة الله. الله يرحمه. وقتيش؟
هديك المرة.
يا الله.
تبع لوضتي اللي يجي لوضتي كنت ألعب معه.
استشهد؟ عن جد؟
2 بس استشهد.
الله يرحمه. خلاص الزعل عادي، راح على الجنة.
أقول لك ليش زعلان؟
ليش زعلان؟
Back to who we are. I don't see how you don't see.
You're the last man. You're the dry bones. You're the prodigal son. You're the lost sheep. You're the people about whom the Bible is speaking, who will stand up in the last days when the trumpet is sounded.
I shall keep it until the end. Give me understanding, and I shall keep your law. Yea, I shall observe it with my whole heart. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
You're the lost sheep. You're the people about